Hi everybody. I welcome you to Super Dialogue, the new analytical format. It is a kind of agri-chat, and the UkrAgroConsult company invites the prominent agrarian experts to confront the latest challenges in post-COVID reality. This is the third Super Dialogue meeting, and I hope you like it very much. And one of the reasons why I follow this format is that Super Dialogue is brief but essential. Previous dialogues were devoted to the markets of corn and to the global markets of rapeseed canola. And now it is high time to shed some light to update the latest trends in the corn market development. So I'd like to give a word to Pedro Dejneka from Brazil and from the United States. Pedro is my great friend, one of the highly recognized experts, highly recognized analysts of the global corn and grain market. Pedro, you are welcome to know your opinion about the latest events in corn market, in commodity market.
Very good, my friend Sergey. Thank you very much. And first thing, it's very pleasant to hear my last name spoken with such precision, by my Ukrainian friend. So you forgot, yes, from Brazil, US, but also from this beautiful land, the Ukraine, as most of you in the Ukraine recognize the name Dejneka.
Thank you.
So anyways, it's always a pleasure to reconnect with all of you. So regarding the corn market, Sergey, it's an interesting time. I actually was this morning just writing about the relationship between prices and fundamentals at this time as it relates to the interest that funds, the spec crowd, right? The investors have in the commodity space at this moment. It's very interesting what's happening. Let's sort of just paint this picture. The United States is about to harvest its second or potentially first largest crop ever of corn. And so we don't know exactly what the number is going to be, but let's just say somewhere around 380 million metric tons here in the United States. All right. That is already being harvested. We have about 20% of that crop harvested 2025, close to 30% harvested right now. That is entering the market. In the meantime, Ukraine is harvesting a crop much better than it had last year. And I want to hear more from you on that, even though possibly the crop is not going to be as good as it could have been, but still a very strong crop. And then obviously we have the situation in Brazil that this year had the biggest drought for the corn crop in its history, right? For the safrinha corn crop, or the second corn crop, which happens during the Brazilian winter, as they say, right? Yeah. But the interesting thing is, as the United States is harvesting its potentially, top two biggest crop of all time, the Ukraine is also harvesting. World demand is not nearly as strong as it was at the same time last year for corn. It's still strong, but not quite as strong. China has been a lot slower with its purchases this year than they have been last year. And now the market kind of awaits, is China coming back, not coming back? What is happening? Well, prices are at a level at the Chicago Board of Trade that don't match up with fundamentals. They don't. I mean, the United States right now has the most expensive corn in the world right here, right now. Ukraine is cheaper. Argentina is cheaper. Brazil is cheaper. Even with the drought, Brazilian corn right here, right now, in October is cheaper than the United States corn. So obviously, this year, Argentina is going to take over the second largest exporter position from the Ukraine and Brazil. So we have basically, we like to call the big three, right? Ukraine, Brazil, and Argentina are the big three in exports, obviously, after the United States. United States still the leading exporter of corn in the world and producer. But when it comes to exports, Argentina, Brazil, and Ukraine are right there, neck and neck, trying to achieve that 35, 40 million metric ton mark in exports, right? And so this year, Argentina had a very good crop, and they are setting a new record in exports. Argentina this year in 2021 is going to export over 40 million metric tons of corn, which is a record for them, right? Producers in Argentina are looking to expand their corn area for the upcoming season, for the 21-22 crop season. So Argentina next year, unless a drought happens in the country that takes the crop considerably down, Argentina next year likely is going to also export somewhere around 40 million metric tons or even more. Then you throw Brazil in the mix. With everything that happened in Brazil, not only in Brazil, but the world corn market. So you had a huge increase in corn prices starting about a year ago, when corn was at $3.50 at the CBOT and went all the way up to basically $7, so doubled in price. Then you have a drought in Brazil this year that increased local prices in Brazil and that are incentivizing the farmer to plan for a very, very large increase in their safrinha crop for next year, right? So the winter corn planting for next year is going to be huge, the second corn crop. Mm-hmm. So if weather contributes, Brazil next year could produce easily 115 to 120 million metric tons of corn, up from about 83 million metric tons this year. So we're looking at a potential increase in Brazil alone of 35 million metric tons in production. So those, Sergey, are numbers that we cannot ignore. And the market right now is more concerned about the spec money, right? The investors, with everything that's happened in the energy markets in all over the world, not just in Europe, but all over the world, crude oil headed towards $80 a barrel here. There's a lot of attention being paid to corn, but in our opinion, we have a situation where we believe prices right now are very far from fundamentals. The U.S., the demand for U.S. corn is going to suffer. Ukraine is there. Argentina is there. Next year, Brazil, if weather allows, will be there. So the question remains, right? How long can we sustain 550, 530 corn in the United States when fundamentals today probably should take it closer to 450, not to 550? So that's our opinion.
Mm-hmm. Well, Pedro, I quite agree with you that if next year Brazilian corn harvest will be 110, 120 million tons, yes, how it will influence the prices, what will be the pressure from the supply side over the prices, and but if weather is quite friendly, the pressure is downward pressure is inevitable.
Absolutely.
Yes, I agree.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sergey, let me ask you this. Now they were talking about the big three. We talked about the Ukraine. We talked, so Ukraine obviously in the last 10 years has had an incredible increase in production, and really in how relevant it has become to the world corn market, right? Argentina this year exported over 40 million metric tons. Brazil a couple years ago did 41, and we believe the next year we could get to a number even higher than that if weather allows for production. What about the Ukraine? When do you see the Ukraine having the ability to not only produce close to 45, maybe 50 million metric tons, and then hopefully surpass the 40 million metric ton mark in corn exports? Do you see that happening? And if so, when?
Thank you for this question, Pedro. Well, really, I agree with you that there are two drivers of high corn production in any country. The first one is money, availability of money. Well, and the next one is weather. Yes, and you see, farmers here in Ukraine are quite happy so far with their revenues because of price hike last year. Well, and those revenues allow them to buy modern agrarian technology to increase the quality and the volume of the production. Well, it is as for money, for just at the moment they are more or less happy. Well, as for weather, yes, again it is quite unpredictable, and this year 2021 is a very nice picture of the influence of weather factor. Well, in general, weather was quite friendly for corn vegetation and for vegetation of other cereals in Ukraine. But you see maybe some delays in harvesting. It was late seeding in April, May, June, and also so late some delays in harvesting. Well, in general, our estimation of Ukrainian corn production is record high, more than 38 million tons.
Very good.
Really, this is the highest corn production, and well, really, the other side of the market, the demand side, is more and more important now. Well, last season, China was top corn importer.
Right.
It was last season 2020-21, and China's share was 36%. Well, yes, there are lots of reports, information from China that this country intends to reduce the coarse grain imports by expanding local feed grain production. So this season we expect recovery in demand for Ukrainian corn from the European Union, from the UK. Well, really, it is quite predictable as Brazilian corn supply declines, and plus corn prices in the South America are record high. Well, and as for the as for weather factor, well, usually Ukrainian farmers prefer to harvest firstly corn and sunflower, but this year late seeding, as I mentioned, and rainy September made farmers postpone harvesting. This increased risks for corn quality, and also losses may go up too. Well, and by the way, farmers, local farmers, this year have to pay to elevators more money for corn drying, as well as currently moisture content of corn is at level of 20-21%, and it's necessary to decrease it to standard 14.5. So quite unusual story this year in 2021. I mean, delay in corn and sunflower harvesting promotes lower supply growth rates of corn and sunflower. And for sure, this is accompanied by upward pressure on prices. I think that if immediately now, at the moment, Argentinian corn export is the biggest in the global market. Just in 6-8 weeks, corn export from Ukraine will be much more important. Well,
Right.
Sure, together, sure, in combination with the export from the United States,
Right.
with the one of the biggest, one of the record high corn production.
Right. Do you see, when we look at the big three, when we look at Ukraine, Brazil, and Argentina, I don't know if we're going to reach that number next year, but I believe that those three countries could very soon export over 120 million metric tons of corn combined. I believe that number could easily happen. So I think Argentina could easily head towards 45 million metric tons in a year or two in exports. And I think Brazil could do the very same, right? So just those two alone, you're looking at 90 million metric tons. And then the Ukraine, assuming that, as you said, the price incentives are still there, Ukraine starts producing 42 million metric tons, maybe now exporting 35 million metric tons or something closer to that number. That brings into question the sustainability of historically high US exports. That's where the analysis goes for me, and for us. When we look at the current world balance sheet, but then we're really looking at the US balance sheet, and we're seeing what the interest from the investment crowd, from the speculative crowd is doing to some of these commodities. Again, Sergey, you've been around the markets a lot longer than I have, even though you have a lot more hair than I do. But it's one of those situations where, I've seen enough to know that when funds get heavily involved in a commodity, we absolutely get distortions of price from fundamentals. Despite what some of the academic studies say, the reality is that yes, when funds get heavily involved, there is a distortion of prices, and I believe we're seeing that now. I believe that corn right here, right now, we're in the middle of harvest of one of the biggest crops in the United States history. The United States is not shipping a lot of corn right now. The United States is not selling a lot of corn right now. And yet prices yesterday went up, 1.5%, 2%. So I believe that we just need to be careful here, thinking that prices are just going to go higher forever. And the producer needs to be very careful, and they need to utilize these moments when funds are interested in our markets and they bid up prices. We need to utilize those moments to hedge, to protect for future crops, because it's very easy to fall in love with the idea of higher prices forever. But in our opinion, the world's ability to produce today is much higher than our ability to consume. I believe that supply is much more powerful than demand. I'm not saying that demand is not powerful. Let me make sure that I correct that, to make sure that everyone listening here understands. Demand is indeed very powerful, but supply is even more powerful. So with that in mind, when we look at current levels of corn prices, unless we're going to have some kind of weather disruption coming up in South America, for instance, which, by the way, South America is off to a great start to the season, despite all of the talk about La Nina and what that could bring, to the crops. We have a lot of clients that are out on the fields planting. They have enough moisture to plant. And obviously, we got to wait and see what the weather does in October, November, and especially in December. But for right now, things look really good. And We just believe that corn prices are at a level that they're about 80 cents to $1 Chicago Board of Trade prices, higher than current fundamentals in our opinion, right? That does not mean that prices can't go higher. We're not saying that. They could go higher, absolutely, right? If crude oil goes to $90, yeah, corn might go to 570 or something like that. But we believe that producers all over the world need to take advantage of the current situation in prices, because once the story is over, once the interest from the spec community is over, I believe we're going to have a problem in our hands. And I think prices can come down, by the way, a lot faster than input costs can come down.
Yeah. Well, Pedro, my position is that everybody now likes high prices, and they wish these high prices continue for 3, 5, 10
That's right.
forever.
That's
yes,
right.
Well, and my position is also that we see lots of cases in just this year or previous year, when high prices, well, the next position of the high prices were sharp drop
Right.
in the prices. Please have a look at the developments in the sunflower oil
Correct.
market. Well, from a price of 1,700 down minus $500 down to 1,200, 1,300. Well, and
Right.
it happened during just 2 weeks. Well, and for sure, demand side is becomes more and more important in working out in adaptation of the trade strategies, and not only of trade strategies but also of strategies of farmers. What to plant this autumn, this fall, and what to plant next spring, next summer.
Yeah.
These issues are currently the most important. Well, another point in the development of demand is that more and more countries try to switch to their local production.
Right.
Of course, grain. And well, if you remember the case of India in the corn market, well, India has never been a great player in the corn market. Well, but still last year, friendly weather, nice weather, promoted that Indian corn export was unusually high.
Right.
Well, slightly less than 4 million tons. And well, I understand that well, 3 million, 4 million is not so important for exporters from Brazil or from US. But for Ukraine, the unexpected corn export from India to not only to Nepal and Bangladesh as a neighbor countries, but also to Vietnam and to Malaysia. Well, as the latter two countries are traditionally bought Ukrainian corn, and this negatively influenced the demand for Ukrainian corn. So and Ukrainian corn was seriously corrected because of the unexpected presence of India in the global corn market. Well, though USDA estimates that Indian corn export for the next season will be more or less at traditional size of 1.5, 1.7 million tons. Well, so I suppose Ukraine might win the share in the Asian market previously lost.
Sure, absolutely. Ukraine is a powerhouse, absolutely coming up. I think it's something we have to, everybody that doesn't know enough about the Ukraine agricultural prowess needs to study a little more, needs to be in touch with you guys and talk with the experts in Ukrainian agriculture to understand a little more about the role that it has. I know in our conversations, learn a lot about the Ukraine and everything that it has been doing in the past few years and that it can't do in the next few years. And so, and I think that brings us back to the main point here, right? Which is, our current price is sustainable, right, Sergey? I think that when we speak to our clients, that's really the message, because, for instance, right now in Brazil, something that's really, catching everybody's eyes and everybody's attention is the high price of input costs, right? Fertilizer cost and et cetera, seed costs. And I mean, everything right now is going up. And so we are being very active with our clients, hedging their production cost and hedging really their exposure to market, right? Because market prices right now still offer a very healthy margin of profit to the world producer, not just in Brazil, not just in Argentina or Ukraine or the United States, all over the world, right? And so because our ability to produce is still much higher than our ability to demand and to consume, I do believe that prices are at a very dangerous level here. And unless inflation is here to stay, right? And that's a whole other discussion that we can have. I personally believe that this inflation that we're seeing, although it is very high right now, US, for instance, inflation here in the United States is at the highest level in almost 30 years, right? We do have to be careful. And that part, I do agree with the Fed here in the United States, where they believe it's temporary. I believe inflation right now has a lot more to do with supply chain disruptions that we had due to the pandemic than simply because we don't have product available. I think availability is one thing, and I think the ability to get the product to where it needs to be is a completely different thing. And I do believe that logistics have a lot to do with the inflation. Obviously, the fact that central banks all over the world are pumping money into economies and the consumers flush with cash. But again, wrapping up what our view is that, look, we do believe inflation is temporary, but in case we're wrong and inflation is here to stay for longer, then we're going to see higher prices of commodities, corn, soybeans, et cetera, in the next few months and years. That being said, when we look at the potential for production, let's just use Brazil right now. Like I just mentioned to you in the beginning of our conversation, Sergey, Brazil could be going from 83 million metric tons to 115, 120. I mean, that's a big gain. And we could go from 20 million metric tons in exports, which is probably where we're going to be this year. We could double that number next year.
But this will influence it. This will pressure prices down.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right.
Yeah.
So we can't sit here and say, oh, and I agree, high prices are sexy, right? High prices, everybody likes high prices, right? But
but you see it, I suppose that downward price correction is highly likely, well, for commodity. Well, and you're quite right in mentioning the high prices for inputs. For fertilizers, yes. For example, for fuel, yeah. So it is really. Will it be some correction between downward movement of commodity prices, and what about the movements of the input prices? yeah. So margins, well,
Now they get squeezed. The margins are about to get squeezed.
yeah, it is an issue of margins.
Right.
So the I'd like maybe to repeat, but now is high time for correction of trade strategies and production strategies,
Yes.
as well. Do not take into account the possibility of uncertainties or unpredictable movement of prices. Well, it is easy way for lower margins and lower efficiency.
Absolutely right, Sergey. Absolutely right.
Well, okay. So let's focus on these issues, on these possibilities, on these challenges for our customers, for our clients,
Yes,
to
sir.
help them to realize all the importance of the decisions which should be made just now.
Risk management, Sergey. Risk management should be number one in everybody's agenda, right? I think one thing that still will surprise many is that a lot of producers around the world, when you ask them, hey, what's your all-in total cost to produce your crop? All in, and a lot of them, oh, I think it's this, I think it's that. And the reality is you have to know your bottom line in costs in order to understand what your margin is. And then we can talk about prices, right? But I think everybody gets everybody gets so drawn into prices. Well, it's the conversation here at the end is input costs are dangerous. They're dangerous.
And what are margins by the end of the day?
Absolutely right. Margins are much more important than price. That's the bottom line, and that's I think that's what brings risk management into number one place. And I think discussions like this can help. It's not whether Sergey is bearish or Pedro is bullish or vice versa. It's not about any of that. It's not about bearish or bullish. It's about analyzing the data that's in front of us, analyzing the trends that are in front of us, and working within probabilities. Neither you nor I can have certainty over anything. We can't sit here and say, oh, prices are definitely going down or they're definitely going up. But we can paint a scenario to help our clients understand, hey, right now, when we look at the market, when we look at supply and demand, and we look at the trends out there, despite some uncertainties, what is the higher probability of happening, right? Is prices going up from here or prices going down from here? And I think that's where the discussion needs to start.
Well, yes, I quite agree with you. I agree with you. So our ultimate goal is to supply our customers, to supply our clients with all most calculated probabilities.
That's right.
And to help them to make the most effective decisions.
Absolutely.
Well, Sergey. Okay. So I think that core market developments, global core market developments, is a very nice illustration of new reality, of how to meet the new challenges, how to meet the new reality, and how to adopt trade and production strategies to the new trends, to the new still high uncertainties in the global market.
Absolutely.
Well, so Pedro, thank you very much for your time, for your efforts, for your conclusions. Well, I suppose that our discussion during the super dialogue will be effective and will be considered by our customers, by our clients as the next step for making grain business well even more effective, even with higher margins.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely, Sergey. Thank you for having me. I
Yes.
hope everyone enjoys it. And
Thank you very much.
until next time.
Next time, see you.
Beleza.
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.